Hi everybody, this is Brian at 3dmetaltools.com. I wanted to introduce something new that I have found to be very useful. With everything that I offer at 3dmetaltools.com, it's really coming from me being a builder of these models first, and then finding what tools I consider to be the most useful, and then either manufacturing them or supplying them. And this is no exception. This is something that I have found to be very useful for my style of building, and they're called Knolling Boards. Knolling. That's actually a term that I was not aware of until just recently, even though I've been doing it all of my life with various styles of building and modeling and all kinds of projects like that. But it's pretty simple here. Basically, we have a numbered grid. Here's a grid that goes from 1 to 50. Over here is a grid that goes from 51 to 100. And then here's one that I'll show you in a second that goes to 101 to 1050. What is knolling? Because like I said, this is a pretty new term. I actually learned this from Adam Savage. They were working on the Apollo spacecraft Lego set, and they knolled all of their parts, and then had a nice discussion about what knolling is. I looked it up. If you'd like to Google knolling Adam Savage or Adam Savage knolling, you'll see a lot of the stuff that I saw. But essentially, at a furniture factory called Knoll, Knoll, back in 1987, there was a guy, a janitor, who had a style of organizing. And it was nothing new, nothing inventive, but somehow the name Knoll from this factory called Knoll stuck as knolling. So the act of simply taking parts and organizing them into groups or tools or items or anything and putting them into groups is apparently called knolling. So I'm going to call it knolling. So anyways, what we have here are these boards that have been laser etched and then also laser cut into these puzzle pieces. I'll get into the puzzle part of this first, but let me show you a little bit closer so you can see some detail. Obviously the laser does a very good job of getting sharp details here, and I think you can see that really there's hardly a gap here that is noticeable in these. There is a gap, of course, but I can take so this is the thickness, this is just like a sprue sheet. This is the thickness of our models. I can't get this piece in here. So this puzzle shape, you might ask yourself, well, why would you do this? First of all, parts won't get caught down in there. But the main reason for doing this is shipping. If I wanted to ship these, now first of all, they're not going to be expensive to begin with, but if I were shipping these in full sheets the way that they are, then it would probably need to go in a large flat rate box, and for domestic shipping that's going to be at least $18. So by engineering this into a puzzle that is precisely cut and stays together nicely, is not going anywhere, lays perfectly flat, then you can actually have this in a package that is this big. So let me give you some examples. Most locations in the US, this can ship for between $7, $8, $9. If you're on the West Coast, it might exceed $10. We're in Ohio, or I'm in Ohio, so going to the West Coast. But this will fit in a priority box, and that's really kind of the main inspiration behind having this whole puzzle idea behind it. As far as international shipping goes, these are still light enough to go international first class. So, for instance, if it were going to Canada, it would be $18 first class. But if it was a full sheet, it would exceed $39. So big difference just in shipping by having this as a puzzle configuration. And then another advantage, if you need to make your workstation mobile, or if you need to move it from time to time, of course, if you wanted a full sheet like this, you could take it and tuck it behind a desk or whatever. But you can also, this is going to take up half of the width and only a third of the length. And, it's obviously very easy to put together as well. So the whole idea behind this really was shipping. I needed to find a way that I could ship these without exceeding. I really didn't want shipping costs to exceed the cost of the entire product itself. So that's kind of why I came up with this puzzle idea. If by chance, by the way, if somebody does prefer to not have this puzzle configuration and you'd like a shipping quote, you don't want it to be in this puzzle configuration, you'd rather have one big solid sheet, I can certainly do that. You can email me at brian@3dmetaltools.com, and I can certainly get you a shipping quote and not do the puzzle cutouts. But that would be kind of a custom order thing, so be sure to contact me, and then we can talk about that for sure. So the way that these are useful is quite self-explanatory, obviously. It fits my building style perfectly because I really don't enjoy cutting out parts nearly as much as I do the actual building process. I love the building portion a lot more. So I like to take every part that I'm going to be using in a model, and I like to cut all of them out and then knoll them, organize them onto these sheets. And that way everything is done, and I don't have the hassle of, well, I guess hassle, it's up to you whether you would consider it a hassle. I don't like cutting out the parts nearly as much as I like the actual building, so I like to have everything laid out and done. It's all set to go, and then all I need to do is start building. I can put my flush cutters away and not touch them for the rest of the build, basically, If your building style is more along the lines of I'd rather have the sheets set aside, or I'm sorry, the part sheets set aside, the metal sheets set aside, and then I'm going to cut out these 3 parts for this page, and then I'm going to cut out these 3 parts for this page, then these may not be right for you. But if you like to build the way that I like to build, I want all of my cutting of parts done early, and I want it done first. And then they're all laid out here on my knolling boards, and they're ready for me to pick up and start building. And then one thing that I will suggest with these is, I've manufactured a board that's 1 through 50, 51 through 100, and then here's disassembled, but it's 101 through 150. I may consider doing 161 to 200 or even more, and if people are interested, email me, and I can certainly do that. But I wanted to let you know that, obviously there are plenty of models that have more than 150 pieces or more than 100 pieces. Let's say that, if you just want to have one knolling board that is 1 through 50 and one knolling board that is 51 through 100, and you have a model that has 131 pieces in it, well then a pretty simple solution to that is that you can put part number 101 in square 1, number 102 in square 2, and 103 in square 3. Another strategy for organizing these parts is oftentimes you'll have sheets, large models will have multiple sheets, and each sheet, metal sheet, will have the same numbers. So in other words, there may be sheet A and part 1. Then there's sheet B and part 1. Well, that could get a little bit confusing if you have multiple number 1 parts. What I do is I utilize 4 corners. So if I have sheet A, part number 1, I'll put it up in this corner of number 1, and then B is in this corner, C and D. So even though you can certainly find plenty of creative ways to use these, and it's all up to you, of course. But when I did the first generation Optimus Prime, that's 569 pieces, and 3 of these knolling boards was no problem. Here's a photo actually of when Optimus was all knolled before I started building. And then lastly, another use for these is quite frequently when you're building these models, you end up having sub-assemblies, meaning that let's say that you're building a vehicle, a car, and you're going to do 4 different sub-assemblies of tires or wheels, or let's just say wheels. Then you will build wheel number 1, wheel number 2, wheel number 3, wheel number 4, and they all look very, very similar, but they are different. Then you need to set those aside for later as you're building the chassis or the body or whatever of the rest of the car, and you need to then get those back. Well, of course, if you have spots to lay them out and places to organize them, there's very little chance of confusing them. So, some of these strategies are very, very basic. Essentially, this is just a very nifty way of organizing all of your parts in any way that you can imagine. It's a grid with numbers. That's about as simple as it gets. It's cut very precise with my laser, etched with the laser as well. And these are available at 3dmetaltools.com. Thank you.